The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. E. Schwab. In the late 17th century, in the quiet French village of Villon-sur-Sarthe, lives a young woman named Adeline LaRue. Adeline is a striking girl with sharp feminine features, wide brown eyes, and 7 distinct freckles scattered across her nose and cheeks like a miniature constellation. She possesses a wild, stubborn curiosity that is utterly at odds with the small domestic life expected of her. While other village girls dream of marriage and children, Adeline dreams of the grand, sprawling world. Her imagination, stoked by the worldly tales of her woodcarver father and the pagan superstitions of Estelle Magritte. Estelle is an ancient, wrinkled woman, rooted like an old tree in the heart of the village, who teaches Adeline to leave offerings for the old gods of the river and earth. But Estelle issues one dire, unyielding warning: never pray to the gods that answer after dark. By the summer of 1714, Adeline's time runs out. Her parents force her into an arranged marriage, condemning her to the very life she dreads, one destined to begin and end in the same 10-meter plot of dirt. On the twilight of her wedding day, consumed by panic, Adeline flees into the darkening woods. Desperate, she sinks to her knees and prays to anyone who will listen, failing to notice that the sun has completely slipped below the horizon. The darkness itself answers her plea. The entity takes the shape of a handsome stranger Adeline once sketched in her charcoal pad. He is a figure of feral, menacing beauty, with raven-black curls, etched features, a cupid's bow mouth, and luminous green eyes that shift in shade depending on his mood. The god, whom she later dubs Luke, makes a sinister bargain for her soul. Adeline asks for freedom and endless time, offering her soul only when she is entirely done with living. Luke grants her wish, but with a cruel, agonizing twist. She is cursed to be forgotten by everyone the moment she leaves their sight, utterly unable to leave any physical mark on the world. The immediate aftermath of her curse is a brutal awakening. When Adeline returns to her village, her own parents look at her with the blank, terrified faces of strangers. She is driven from her home, embarking on a grueling journey to Paris. For years, she suffers the absolute miseries of her new existence. She freezes in the winter, starves in the streets, and learns the horrific reality that she cannot write her own name, hold a job, or even retain a rented room. If she drops a shattered cup, it magically mends. If she writes a word in the dirt, the letters instantly dissolve. She is a ghost trapped in a living body. Over the centuries, Adeline, now simply calling herself Addie, learns to survive. She learns to steal fine clothing, to slip into the vacant beds of the wealthy, and to navigate the ever-changing landscape of human history. She discovers that while she cannot leave a physical mark on the world, ideas are wilder than memories. She learns to plant thoughts in the minds of artists, musicians, and writers, becoming a nameless muse whose constellation of freckles haunts hundreds of masterpieces across Europe. Through all these lonely centuries, her only constant companion is Luke. The dark god visits her on the anniversary of their deal, constantly mocking her isolation and trying to force her to surrender her soul. She stubbornly refuses. Over time, their bitter war of attrition shifts into a twisted, toxic romance. He provides her with the only recognition she has ever known, and during a humid era in New Orleans, they even become lovers. But Addie eventually realizes that his affection is just another cage, a possessive obsession masking his utter lack of true humanity. When she rejects him, Luke burns her beloved house to the ground in a fit of spite, and their Cold War resumes. 300 years after her curse began, the year is 2014, and Addie is navigating the vibrant, bustling streets of New York City. She lives a fluid, borrowed life, slipping in and out of apartments and beds. She briefly stays with a warm, open-hearted abstract painter named Sam, a striking woman with wild blonde curls, a lean build, and silver-streaked blue eyes. But no matter how deep the connection feels in the night, Addie always wakes up a complete stranger by morning. Her endless cycle is finally shattered on a cold March day when she walks into a labyrinthine used bookstore called The Last Word. She casually steals a Greek copy of an ancient epic right under the nose of the clerk, Henry Strauss. Henry is an anxious but deeply endearing young man with dark, messy curls, thick-framed glasses, a lean, wolfish build, an open face, and kind gray-green eyes. When Addie returns to the shop the very next day to playfully exchange the stolen book, Henry stops her dead in her tracks. He looks at her with absolute clarity and utters three impossible words: "I remember you." The shock of being remembered changes the very fabric of Addie's existence. They begin a whirlwind, deeply emotional romance. Addie is introduced to Henry's vibrant world, including his best friends. Bea, a striking, fiercely protective black woman with her dreadlocks coiled like a crown and hands adorned with silver rings. And Robbie, a dramatic, tawny-haired actor with a flair for the theatrical. Basking in the unprecedented joy of being known, Addie finally tells Henry the absolute truth of her 300-year history. Because he can remember, Henry begins writing her sprawling story down in a green notebook, capturing the life that has been erased millions of times over. But as their love deepens, Addie realizes Henry harbors a devastating secret. Underneath his gentle exterior lies a boy who has always felt too much, his heart completely unarmored against the world's pain. A year prior, shattered by a rejected marriage proposal and crushed by the lifelong feeling that he was never truly enough for anyone, a despairing, drunken Henry nearly threw himself off a Brooklyn rooftop in the pouring rain. Luke appeared to him in the storm. Desperate to numb his aching heart, Henry made a deal with the darkness to be loved by everyone for exactly 1 year. The curse of Henry's deal is a profound, isolating tragedy. Anyone who looks at him now immediately sees an idealized, perfect version of whatever they desire most, whether it is a dutiful son, a perfect lover, or a brilliant scholar. People look at him with a milky, glazed fog in their eyes, loving a phantom instead of the real man, leaving Henry feeling more hollow and unseen than ever before. Addie is the sole exception in the universe. Her own curse miraculously cancels out his illusion, clearing the fog from her vision and allowing her to see the real, flawed, beautifully human Henry. But the tragedy of their miraculous collision soon becomes apparent. Henry's year is almost up. He has only weeks left to live. Devastated, Addie realizes that their meeting was not a stroke of cosmic luck. Luke meticulously orchestrated it. The dark god manipulated fate to bring two cursed, desperate souls together, fully knowing they would fall deeply in love. It was a sadistic ploy to prove to Addie that human love is agonizingly brief and to break her stubborn spirit once and for all by forcing her to watch her true love die. As Henry's final days slip away like sand, they spend their remaining time fiercely loving each other, visiting underground clubs and sprawling art exhibits, refusing to let the encroaching doom ruin their present. But Addie absolutely refuses to let Henry die to satisfy Luke's arrogant pride. 3 nights before Henry's time is up, Addie slips out of bed and summons Luke in the dark. She offers the shadow god a new, unprecedented bargain. She will not surrender her soul, but she will willingly stay by Luke's side, as his companion and lover, for as long as he desires her presence. In exchange, Luck must let Henry live a full, natural life, and Henry must retain all his memories of Addie. Luke, blinded by his own arrogant triumph and his deeply twisted, possessive love for her, gleefully accepts the deal. The storm ultimately passes. Henry wakes up alone in his apartment, the sunlight streaming in through the window. Addie is gone, but the curse is broken in one monumental way. He remembers everything. He finds his stack of notebooks filled with her 300-year history. Honoring her legacy and their love, Henry turns those notebooks into a polished manuscript, publishing the story anonymously so that Addie's name and life will finally leave a permanent, undeniable mark on the world. Sometime later, in a bookstore in London, Addie finds the published hardcover on a display table. She is by Luke's side, bound to him by the strict wording of their new deal. As Luck gloats over his apparent victory, wrapping his arms around her, Addie smiles a secret, triumphant smile. She knows that Luke is fundamentally incapable of true, selfless love. She has 300 years of endless patience, and she has crafted a masterful, long-term trap. She will spend the coming years, decades, or centuries slowly driving him mad, ruining his idealized version of her until he grows to loathe her once again. Eventually, the dark god will be the one to cast her off. And when he does, she will finally be truly, permanently free.